What's the ROI on Ylopo? That is a very complicated answer for me, and I'll share why in a minute, but I'm very interested. If I was an agent and I said, hey, Grant, hey, Mike, I'm thinking about Ylopo, what's your ROI? How do you answer that question?
I know how I do, but go ahead, Grant.
You know, it is complicated because are you talking about over a year? Are you talking about over 2 years? Because if they're early funnel leads, how are you going to measure that, right?
Last 12 months.
Last 12 months. If I know what we're at about 4 times just because I know that, but I'm taking you got to break it down. What's the remarketing? I got to break the whole thing down. So I always answer just saying we're right around 4 times.
So I'd like to add this too. You do have to segment it out because you're going to have a different ROI if you're using remarketing heavily versus just new lead gen. If you broke those 2 things out, really what you're doing is you're taking the remarketing to people that are further down the funnel, and that's going to have a higher ROI than maybe somebody that's brand new and 18 months out. But I will say this too, you can't measure it strictly on ROI because there's other tools within Ylopo.
Right.
High value. Like the listing rocket seller reports, right? I mean, things like that, the open house tool. Those are all things that are sort of just tools in your business that it's hard to say, here's my ROI. But it's there. It's just hard to measure it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So for me, I've got the new lead ROI, which is I got X amount of leads. I closed X amount of them. And this was my return on investment for that. But then you've got remarketing. Like, my gosh, remarketing of leads from Ylopo, Realtor.com, ZBuyer, Craigslist, open house lead. They're all coming in. We're remarketing, and they're coming back. And I've got over 10,000 people that are using my website daily. So out of the billions of dollars Zillow is spending for market share of the brains and minds of buyers in our community, 10,000 people are using my little old website with my little old $4,000 to $5,000 a month marketing budget. They've decided that I'm relevant. How do you put an ROI on that, right? Like, do I attribute the realtor lead with the realtor closing, or the fact that when they came in from realtor, now they're using my website every day? So that's why it's not that it's not a good question. It's that I feel like because of the depth of Ylopo tools, it makes it a more complicated, while still important, a more complicated discussion. Is that fair to you guys?
Well,
yeah, I look, what am I getting off my sphere from the sphere marketing that they're touching? I can't even measure that, right?
Yeah.
Or how about this? We're not even talking about recruiting. How do you start talking about recruiting and you bring on, 3 agents that love the product, and each of those agents are, call it $50,000 a year of gross, income to your team. Do you start measuring that with your ROI? So, I mean, it's hard to really answer that question because of the scope of what Ylopo really does. But I can tell you this much. Even an average converter, just letting the system run on its own, and you give it a year to do so, is going to have an ROI. Right. If you are a smart, good converter with systems, with follow-up, with accountability, with the real operations behind what you're doing, you're going to kill it with the ROI in Ylopo. It's just how it is.
I typically, return on investment, I'm getting 4 to 5 times every dollar I spend on Ylopo. With Zillow, because Zillow got so expensive, I was closing almost as much in units with Zillow versus Realtor, but the ROI was barely profitable. Like, I'm talking about maybe like 10% profitable, nowhere near 400%. And I feel like Zillow and Realtor.com, I still buy Realtor.com, not as much, but I still buy it. And I feel like they've kind of hoodwinked the industry to think that you can only have one kind of conversation. Do you want to go see the house?
Right.
And that's the lead if they say yes. And it's unfortunate.
So the most of the portals, they're really geared towards the transactional buyers. Jesse Baudouin of Call Action, he brought up a good point not that long ago. He was talking about, that if you look at the Zillow stats, 30% of all Zillow activity of inquiries really is click to call. They're sitting in front of a sign in a yard.
I want to see that house.
Yeah, they call the listing agent. The person doesn't answer. Their next step is click to call in Zillow, and boom, right? And it goes to the Zillow agent. So that's their whole model, is that right there. But what's happening with Ylopo is you're able to fish upstream and catch those people long before they're in front of a house and calling on a sign. You're catching them months before.